Two gangs of prisoners are thrown onto a remote island to fight it out. Russian inmates versus American inmates. The Russians have only 80 guys. The Americans, they have 110. Every single one of them is a violent felon, each having killed at least 5 people. The prison warden dumped them all on an uninhabited island, no guards, no supervision. The idea? Only the strongest survive. The Russian prisoners were dropped off first. They were all shackled and forced to squat on the ground. A prison staffer explained the rules. Every 3 months, supply drops would be made. If something urgent came up, they could row to a buoy offshore to make a request. After laying out the rules, the guards dumped a pile of handcuff keys on the ground. Each key was numbered and matched 1 pair of cuffs, but only the exact number would work. Then, without another word, the guards got on the boat and left. The second they were gone, the prisoners went wild. Everyone lunged for the pile of keys, shoving, punching, yelling. It was total chaos. No one could tell which key was theirs. Desert Island Showdown. An old man nicknamed Buddha came up with a plan. He had people line up and shove the other prisoners out of the way. Then he sent someone to get the keys and started unlocking the handcuffs for his group. Buddha's son told his crew to grab axes from the supply crates. Just like that, they formed a gang, the Axe Squad. The Axe Squad drove the handcuffed prisoners into the ocean. Then Buddha's son demanded the rest of the keys, but supplies were running low. So Buddha came up with a second idea: kill them. The handcuffed prisoners overheard this. A few tried to run. They were killed instantly. Realizing they weren't getting out alive, the handcuffed prisoners grabbed rocks and started fighting back with everything they had. There were more of them, and with rocks, perfect for close combat, they turned the tide. The Axe Squad couldn't keep up. Buddha's son was strong and took out a few of them, but someone snuck up on him and smashed his face in with a rock. He died. Buddha didn't make it out either. He was killed in the chaos too. During the fight, 3 prisoners tried to escape by boat. They even smashed the emergency signal. They thought they were home free, but a wave dragged them under. They died at sea. The prisoners were stranded on a deserted island. They started dividing up the supplies. But Bear Drills had slung a backpack full of rations over his shoulder and headed up into the mountains alone. He figured he'd be safer on his own. He found a rocky cliffside and decided to camp out there for a few days. But when he woke up the next morning, he discovered a bunch of lemmings had raided his food bag. Everything was gone. Luckily, Bear still knew how to catch birds. He managed to grab a seabird and roasted it over a fire. Just as he was about to dig in, a surprise visitor showed up. A scrawny guy, pale and starving, named Lenny. Lenny saw the food and quietly pulled out a knife. Bear grabbed his axe in response. They exchanged a few tense words, but Lenny quickly lost his nerve and handed over the knife on his own. Turns out, he'd escaped from the main camp. He told Bear that the camp had been hit by a mouse infestation too, and all their food got wiped out overnight. He was starving and desperate, so he ran. Lenny had nothing on him except a small pouch of salt, his only possession, which he offered to Bear as a gift. Bear, feeling a little sympathy, split his roasted bird in half and gave Lenny a share. Lenny devoured it, deeply grateful, and from that moment on, the two formed an alliance. When Bear woke up, he saw Lenny doing something unspeakable in front of a photo of his wife. It took a second for it to sink in. Then Bear snapped. He charged over and kicked Lenny so hard he went flying, then gave him the beating of a lifetime. Lenny curled up on the ground, covering his head, begging for mercy. He swore up and down he'd never do it again. Winter eventually rolled in. The seagulls were gone, food was running low, and with one more mouth to feed, Bear and Lenny had no choice but to head out to the coast and try their luck fishing. That's when they saw something strange. Bear's eyes narrowed. He recognized it right away, parts from a seaplane. They followed the trail and soon enough found the wreckage frozen into a glacier. The reason Bear knew the parts: he used to be a pilot. His wife and kids had died in a crash caused by the crew's negligence. In his rage, Bear had tracked down and killed all 6 of the people responsible. That's how he ended up in prison. Now, Bear and Lenny figured they just had to survive the winter. Once the ice melted, they could dig the plane out and get the hell off that island. but it was brutal out. Even water froze into solid blocks. They were stuck sleeping outside, and it was clear they wouldn't last much longer. The firewood wouldn't light. It gave off nothing but smoke, and Bear was hacking up a lung, half frozen. Still, he dragged Lenny away from the worst of the wind. Out here, if you fall asleep in the cold, you don't wake up. Lenny suggested sneaking back to the old camp and stealing a sack of coal bricks to get through the winter. Bear thought about it, then nodded. The two of them set off right away, heading back toward the old camp. Two prisoners were about to freeze to death. They crawled up to the edge of the campfire to stay warm and ended up falling asleep. The camp boss had split the prisoners into two groups. One group was his people. They wore red and acted as the enforcers. They had food, water, and even blow-up dolls for entertainment. The other group, they weren't even treated like people. Dressed in blue, they were locked in cages, starved to the bone until they didn't have the strength to question the camp boss's rule anymore. Every day, the gang played a game, a hunting game, simple rules. Everyone in blue had to walk in circles inside the cage. Once the gong sounded, they had to run for the cells, fast. The last one back got killed and used as meat. Pure jungle law. The game started fast. A guy with dyed yellow hair stood in the watchtower and hit the gong. The blue shirts took off running for their lives. They trampled over each other, smashed through doors, busted out windows, doing whatever it took to get inside. Up above, the camp boss watched it all. This was a life-or-death game called If You Run Slow, You Die. One prisoner, not wanting to get eaten, kicked his companion hard, making them the scapegoat. Now there was meat to eat. The camp boss tossed aside the knife and his men picked it up to finish off the film prey. Everyone rushed in, grabbing it like they were picking up half a pig and heading to the fire pit to enjoy nature's bounty. At the fire pit, Bear and Lenny were sneaking coal bricks, but they were so exhausted that they ended up falling asleep right there. A large group of people showed up and Lenny was woken up by the noise. He quickly hid behind a rock, trying to wake up Bear but couldn't. So he decided to stop hiding and try to drag Bear to run away with him. But in the end, both of them got caught. The camp boss thought they had survived 2 months in the wild, seeing them as both dangerous and clever, so he sent them to wear blue uniforms. His men, including the chubby guy, tried to plead for them, but they got a good beating. They were all sent off together, and the next day things went on. The game began. The gong sounded. The rest of the people in blue ran away in panic, but Bear stood still. But Lenny quickly dragged him away. Soon after, a guy was kicked out of the room, becoming the target. He struggled violently, then collapsed in pain after getting hit in the stomach. He lifted his head, gazing into the distance. Even a killer will call for his mom when he's scared out of his mind. Everyone was shaken by the scene. No one said a word. A little while later, the guy was tied up, and just before he died, he asked for a drink. Lenny held up a cup and fed him a sip. Then the man was executed. This can't go on like this. If we keep going, we'll be eaten alive. Bear couldn't stand it anymore, so he encouraged everyone to fight back. He suggested going out to sea to repair the signal tower. The group agreed. They made a pact. They will all refuse to take part in tomorrow's game. The hunting game started as usual, with the gong sounding off. A few of the prisoners in blue instinctively ran, but most didn't move. Instead, they slowly gathered behind Bear. Bear stood face to face with the camp boss, exchanging demands. He suggested fixing the signal tower and asking the government for food. The camp boss didn't agree. Then Bear mentioned finding a plane that could take them off the island, and only then did the camp boss give the order to open the cage. He then commanded 2 of his men to follow Bear to the signal tower, but as soon as Bear and his crew left, the camp boss turned on them. He surrounded the prisoners in blue, knowing Bear had been stirring things up and threatening his position. He ordered the execution of Bear's 2 helpers to get rid of the trouble. Then he yelled at the remaining prisoners in blue, "The slowest will die." The blue-clad prisoners panicked, quickly scattering and running back to their cage. Meanwhile, out at sea, Bear had no idea what was happening on the island. He was focused on fixing the signal tower. When he climbed up, he saw that the circuit board had been smashed and was beyond repair. There was no way to fix it, so he had to return to the island. The camp boss had been waiting impatiently, drinking heavily. His men tried to calm him down with kind words, but he wasn't having it. Instead, he threatened to throw them in with the prisoners in blue. This camp boss had it rough. One of his guys stepped up and said, They'd found a plane that could fly them off the island. The camp boss didn't believe him and mocked him by pretending to be a flight attendant. The mechanic, fed up, pulled out a screwdriver and stabbed the camp boss in the throat. The camp boss died, and with him, his reign of power ended. Bear became the new leader and immediately laid out his plan. First, they'd use the seaplane to tow a cabin to get everyone off the island. Second, he abolished the hunting games. All dead people had to be buried. Third, they'd divide the food equally. If it wasn't enough, they'd eat seaweed to get through the next 25 days. Just then, Lenny ran up with a report. Turns out there was no government monitoring the island at all. He'd made an SOS signal by running in circles, but no one responded. Under Bear's leadership, the prisoners settled into a peaceful routine. Bear even forgave the blonde guy. Soon after, Bear led them to the plane and everyone got super excited, jumping around and making noise like gorillas. They took the plane apart piece by piece and carried it off. The prisoners had been living a tough life on the deserted island. Finally, the government team arrived. Bear asked for gasoline. When they asked what it was for, he gave the excuse he had already prepared. He said the wind turbine wasn't reliable, and they absolutely needed gasoline to power the generator, or they wouldn't survive. The government official agreed right away, then asked another question. The island had originally held 206 prisoners, but there were only 80 left. Bear just brushed it off, saying most of them had gotten sick. After getting the supplies and fueling up the plane, Bear organized the final test. After waiting for so long, he was eager to see if the plane would actually take off. With a strong pull, the propeller started spinning fast, and everyone burst into excited laughter. The prison guards brought in the new inmates to the deserted island. There were 80 Russians on one side and 110 Americans on the other. A big battle was about to kick off between the Russian and American prisoners. The American leader, a bald guy, ordered his crew to grab the keys and unlock the handcuffs. As soon as the guards left, the bald guy didn't waste any time. He called out for Bear. The tension in the air was instant. Lenny secretly stuffed a stone into his hat, turning it into a short-handled mace. Bear walked up to the bald guy and extended his hand as a gesture of goodwill. The bald guy didn't accept it and took a step back. Just as Bear turned to leave, he didn't realize that the bald guy, despite his big size, had terrible manners. Taking advantage of Bear turning around, the bald guy threw a sucker punch to the back of his head. Bear didn't see it coming and went down immediately. The fight broke out in an instant. It was total chaos. The mechanic saw the opportunity and grabbed Bear from the crowd, carrying him away. A big, bulky prisoner tried to chase them down, but the mechanic fought him off for a bit, then pretended to retreat. After that, he triggered a trap and took the guy out in one shot. The bald guy really lived up to his title as the leader. He grabbed an axe with his bare hands and took down 3 people in a row. When he faced off against the white-haired guy with a giant hammer, he blocked it with his chest, then swung his axe straight at him. It looked vicious, but it was just a feint. The real attack was with dual blades. He managed to slice the white-haired guy with a quick jab, then swung his axe around, narrowly missing the guy's white hair. The bald guy raised his axe high, preparing for the killing blow, but just as he was about to strike, the bearded guy stepped in and blocked it. The bearded guy was swinging his own axe while reaching out to grab the bald guy, using his special iron head move. The bald guy's head took a hit, making him dizzy. After a moment, he shook it off and went all in with a desperate strike, but unexpectedly, the bearded guy grabbed the dagger in his hand, twisted it around, and plunged it into the bald guy's chest. The bald guy fell, defeated. The chaos on the island was too intense. The soldiers saw it happen and quickly reported it to their leader. The leader immediately turned to his higher-ups for instructions and soon got the command to wipe them out. A machine gun was aimed at the island. The prison guards started shooting at the prisoners. Most of the prisoners were killed, leaving only 4 hiding in the plane hangar. Bear told the group to push the plane, hoping to escape by air. At that moment, Lenny, who had witnessed the massacre on the island, said his goodbyes to Bear and ran up the mountain. Ever since he committed the crime of killing 22 people, he'd been looking for hell, and now the island had become hell. Without a second thought, he jumped off the cliff. The remaining 3 finally took off, but they were locked onto by a warship. Heavy gunfire took down the 2 in the back, leaving only Bear at the controls. He managed to escape the hellish island and start a new life, and that's how the film ends. The movie is called Novaya Zemlya. It was released in 2008. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.